Hello everyone, it's Miller here. Hope that you're doing well. If you're at KSA, hope you're enjoying your Easter holidays and getting lots of revision done. This is the first of the papers that I set you from the November 2021 series. So at the top, I put the grade boundaries on for this particular year. So out of the three papers, each paper is out of 80, so a total of 240. To get a 9, that is 187, so you would need divide that by 3, that's about 62, 63 marks per paper. To get an 8, you divide 154 by 3, etc., etc. So you should have done the papers first. That's really, really important. Please make sure you've done the papers first, and then you can see how you have done by using the mark scheme or using this video to help you. So I hope this is useful. I think paper 1 is probably the easiest out of the 3 papers. I've just done all 3, and I think paper 3 is probably the hardest, but hopefully you have seen the questions that you got wrong so that you can go to Corbett, go to Sparks and practice those particular topics that you struggled with. Okay, let's go through it. Let's start off with question number 1. Okay, so this paper starts off with multiplying two decimals. So it's really easy to make a mistake here, and it's well worth you practicing for 10-15 minutes some of these calculations. You can go to Corbett, or you can just make up your own examples, but let's go through this question. So what you should have done is taken away the decimals first of all, so doing 367 times by 42. A number of different ways you could have done this. You could have used the column method, you could have used the box method. Let's just go ahead and use the column method because this is what most of you use. So 7 times by 2 is 14, 6 times by 2 is 12, plus the 1 is 13. We get a 7 there. Placeholder 0. Now we do 7 times by 4, 28. 6 times by 4, which is 24, plus the 2 is 26. 3 times by 4 is 12, add the 2 and it's 14. When we add these two columns, we get 4, 1, 4, 5, and 1. Okay, so the answer that we get is this thing here, but that's not obviously our real answer. We need to think, how many decimal points have we moved? So we have moved 1, 2, 3 in total. So we're going to go 1, 2, 3 to get our answer, 15.514. And let's just sense check, does that answer make sense? Well, 3.67 is about 4, 4.2 is about 4. So 4 times 4 is 16. So our answer is close to that, so that definitely makes sense. So again, definitely worth you spending some time to practice this. Very common for them to start off paper 1 in the first couple of questions by asking you to multiply two decimals together. Part B of this question is also a decimal calculation. This time it is a division. So again, it's well worth you spending some time practicing these types of questions because when they come up, you definitely want to get those 3 marks. So I'm going to first of all change this to a integers. So I'm going to do this calculation. Number of ways that you could do this. What I could do is turn this into a box or a bus stop division. Now I'm just going to write out my 16 times tables so that it is a bit easier for me to do. Let's go up to 112 and see if we need more later. So 16 into 5 doesn't go. 16 into 59 goes 3 times. Remains at 11. So I'll put that 11 here. 16 into 118 goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 times. Remains a 6. And then 16 into 64 goes nicely 4 times. So we can write out that answer, 374, but we need to find out what we do with the decimal point now. So what do I do here? Well, I have gone back 2 decimal places here, so my answer needs to be 100 times smaller. but then I've divided by an answer which is 10 times smaller. So actually I only need to go back one decimal place and I get 37.4. And again, let's check that. So roughly that is 60 divided by 2. So I can just write that down there. Let's do that in another color. Roughly 60 divided by 2, which is roughly 30. So again, I've got my answer in the same kind of ballpark, so I am pretty confident that I am right. So again, definitely worth practicing this kind of question if you're not sure. Okay, question 2. Hopefully this was a nice and easy one. It was a Venn diagram question. Again, with all these questions, I put the Corbett reference numbers so you can practice similar types of questions. So I could have put all the even numbers less than 19 in here. So let's first of all just list out all of those even numbers less than 19. And I got to put these into the Venn diagram. So the first one, 2, well, that is only in B, not in A, so it goes in B. Cross that off. 4 is not in A or in B, so it goes on the outside. 6 is in A and B, so we'll put that in the middle. And then we can do the rest fairly straightforwardly. Okay, so that was not too difficult. Let's just check how I put all of the numbers in. So we'll count up how many numbers I had to start. I had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 numbers. And I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 numbers. So that's good. I haven't forgotten to put any numbers in. Let's move on. Okay, question 3, hopefully another easy question. We do lots of practice in this in Do Nows, but again, if you need to practice this, I put the Corbett reference number in. So first, changing these numbers into improper fractions. So 4 times 5 is 20, add the 1 is 21. And then 2 times 3 is 6, add the 2 is 8. And then I need to change both of these numbers into the same denominator. 5 times 3 is 15. So I'm going to multiply the first numerator by 3, because 5 times 3 is 15. So 21 times by 3, 63. Should be able to do that in your head. And then 8 times 5 is 40. And then subtracting the numerators, we have 23 over 15. But let's check, what does it want the answer in as a mixed number? So I need to convert that back. 15 goes into 23 just the once, with a remainder of 8. So that is my final answer. But again, if you need to practice these, definitely worth spending some time, because it's very, very common for them to ask this early on in the non-calculated paper. Okay, now let's move on to question 4. So at the end of 2017, the value of Tamara's house was at 220,000, okay? And the value of Raheem's house was 160,000. At the end of 2019, the value of Tamara's house had decreased by 20%, and the value of Raheem's house had increased by 30%. At the end of 2019, whose house had the greater value? You must show how you get your answer. Okay, so what does my answer need to look like? It's asking me whose house had the greater value, so my answer is going to be either Tamara or Raheem, and I'll have some numbers to back that up. Okay, so let's do Tamara first of all. So she starts off with 220,000, and it decreased by 20%. So a number of ways you could do this. What I would do probably is find 10% first. This is a non-calculator paper. So 10% of 220,000, well, divide that by 10 and you get 22,000. So to get 20%, we're going to double it to get 44,000. And then because it's decreasing, I need to subtract it from the original number. So 220,000 minus 44,000. and I get an answer of 176,000. Okay, now let's do Raheem on the other side of the page. This time it's increasing by 30%. So I'm going to do it in the same way. 10% of 160,000, 16,000 to get 30%, times that by 3. So 48,000, and this is an increase. So I'm going to add that to the original amount. And I get 208,000. So let's go back to the question. Whose house had the bigger value? Well, I can see that Raheem's value is clearly bigger. So I'm going to say Raheem as 208,000 is bigger than 176,000. And I'm done. Nice 4-mark question there. Again, practice with this if you need to, with the non-calculated percentage amounts. What you could have done is use scale factors. So a decrease of 20% would be times by 0.8, and an increase of 30% would be times by 1.3. So you could have done it that way, or given that it's a non-calculator, you could have done it in the method that I chose to use. Let's keep going. Okay, Rosie, Matilda, and Ibrahim collect stickers. It's given the ratio R to M to I, 4 to 7 to 15. And it says Ibrahim has 24 more stickers than Matilda. Ibrahim has more stickers than Rosie. How many more? So our answer needs to be a number. How many more stickers Ibrahim has than Rosie? So let's set this up as a bar model. So we have R, M, and I. 2, 3, 4 for Rosie. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 for Matilda. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 for Ibrahim. Okay, what does it tell us? Well, it tells us the difference between Ibrahim and Matilda. So this difference here is 24. How many boxes is that? Well, it is 15 minus 7, which is 8. So to find out what's in each box, I'm going to do 24 divided by 8, which is 3. So I can write 3 in all of the boxes. Don't have to do it with all of them, but might as well. And then let's go back to the question. Ibrahim has more stickers than Rosie. How many more? So I need to compare Rosie and Ibrahim. And this difference here, well, how many boxes is the difference? 15 minus 4 is 11, and each box is worth 3. So my answer is going to be 11 times 3, which is 33. So hopefully that was a nice and straightforward ratio question. Let's keep going. Okay, so question 6 starts to get a bit trickier here, but let's have a look. The diagram shows a prism. The cross-section of the prism is a right-angled triangle. Okay, I can see that. The base of the triangle has length 5 centimeters. Okay, I can see that. Let's just tick off these things here. The prism has a length 25. Okay, and the volume is 750. Okay, that's important. I can see that this is a question about volume, and it's asking me to find out the height of the prism. So where is that height? It's up here. Let's call that h, because that's an unknown that I need to find. Okay, so I need to remember how to find the volume of a prism. So I'm going to write down my formula for volume of a prism, which is the cross-sectional area times by the length. Now, which of these things do I know? I know what the volume is. The volume is 750. Well, the cross-sectional area is the area of that triangle, which is base times by height divided by 2. Which of these things do I know? Well, I know the base, which is 5, but I don't know the height. The height was h. And what about the length? Well, I know the length, that is 25. So let's put all of these things in. Volume, 750, equals the cross-sectional area, which is 5 times the height divided by 2, times by the length, which is 25. So this is now an equation that I need to solve to find my height. Okay, what is my first step? My first step, get rid of that 2 times everything by 2. So 5 times height times 25. Now, 5 times 25 is 125. So to get my height, I'm going to divide by 125. Now, how do I do this? Well, I could just do a bus stop division again, if I wanted to. How many times does 125 go into 15? Well, it doesn't. What about 150? Goes once, and the remainder is 25. And I get a nice answer because 125 goes into 250, exactly 2. So I've got my answer of 12 centimeters. Now, what could I do if I got some time at the end to go over? Well, I could check that my answer is correct. So let's do a check here. What is my volume? Well, my volume is my cross-sectional area, which is 5 times 12 divided by 2. That is equal to 30. And so my volume is my cross-sectional area, which is 30, times by 25. And I could just quickly check that. And it is indeed 750. So I can check my answer at the end to make sure that I'm right. And it's good to build in habits for doing that. Okay, question 7. The diagram shows a cube with edges of length x centimeters and a sphere of radius 3. Okay, I can see both of those in the diagram below. It also tells me the formula for surface area of a sphere. So I'm definitely going to use that formula for pi r squared. Then it says the surface area of the cube is equal to the surface area of the sphere. Show that, okay, so show that question. So this needs to be my answer. X equals root k pi, where k is an integer. So that is the answer that I need to get to. Okay, how do I start? Well, let's start off by figuring out an expression for the surface area of the cube and the surface area of the sphere. So let's think about the cube. How do I find the surface area of a cube? Well, it's the area of all the faces. Well, what's the area of one of the faces? Well, this is a square of side length x. So the surface area of one of the faces is x times by x, which is x squared. But how many faces does a cube have? It's got 6 identical faces. So times that by 6, and I get 6x squared. So that's the surface area of a cube. What about for this sphere? Well, I'm just going to plug into the formula for pi r squared, what my radius is, which is 3. So that is 4 pi times by 9, which is 36 pi. So now I've got the expressions for the surface area of both of them. I can make them equal to each other. So 6x squared is equal to 36 pi. And now I need to make x the subject because my answer starts off with x equals to something. How do I do that? Well, I think my first step is to divide by 6. That seems sensible. So I get x squared equals 6 pi. And now how do I get x by itself? Well, I've got x squared. I'm going to square root both sides. So I have x equals root 6 pi. Does that look like my answer? Yes, it does, where my value of k is 6. So I think that I have shown that x is equal to root k pi. Okay, let's keep on going. Question 8, solve x squared equals 5x plus 24. Okay, so my first thought is, what kind of equation is this? What kind of math do I need to be using? Well, I can see I've got an x squared term, an x term, and a constant. So when I've got these things, I think that I've got a quadratic equation. And I know that to solve this, I need to get everything equal to 0 on one side. So what side should I move it onto? Well, I want the x squared to be positive, so I'm going to move the 5x and the 24 onto the other side. So x squared minus 5x minus 24 is equal to 0. And now I can find two numbers that multiply to make minus 24 and add to make minus 5. What are those numbers? Well, if you're not sure, remember, you can list the factor pairs. And I'm looking for two factors where the difference is 5. So I think I've got it. Which one's positive, which one's negative? Well, I think it has to be 3 and minus 8. Those are going to be my two numbers, because 3 times minus 8 is minus 24, and 3 minus 8 is minus 5. So let's put that into my brackets. And I have x1 and x2. What value makes the bracket 0? Minus 3 and 8. So I'm going to put my answers on my number line. So it's really important that you are able to recognize when we've got a quadratic equation. And there's lots of good questions in that Corbett reference that I've got in the top right-hand corner of the screen. Okay, question 9 has got a selection of 1-mark questions. I put the Corbett reference numbers for each of these. So part A, write down the value of 7 to the power of 0. Anything to the power of 0 is always equal to 1. So nice, easy mark there. Part B, find the value of 3 times 3 to the power of 6 times 3 to the power of minus 6. Okay, well, I know that if I'm multiplying two indices of the same base, I know that I add the indices. So what I need to do here is, because my base is all 3, I need to add the indices. Now, the first one, 3, is 3 to the power of 1. But if you look at it, these two are going to cancel each other out, because 6 plus minus 6 is just 0. So what I'm left with, once I cancel these out, is just 3 to the power of 1, which is just 3. Part C, I've got a negative index here. I know that when I've got a negative index, I need to take the reciprocal of the base and change the power to a positive. So if I do this, I've got this calculation here, 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 is 16. So my answer is 1 over 16. And the final one, well, this time I've got a fractional index. So that means I'm going to take the cube root of 27, which I know is 3, because 3 times 3 times 3 does equal 27. So my answer is 3. So again, if you need to practice these, very common on a non-calculated paper, they almost always give you an index question in paper 1. Definitely worth practicing these. Okay, question 10. The diagram shows a shape made from 6 identical squares. The total area of the shape is 5,406 centimeters squared. Find an estimate for the length of one side of each square. So a couple really important words in this question. This word, whenever you see an estimate, always means you have to round. Always, always, always have to round. And it's asking you for the length. Okay, now I don't know what the length of one of the squares is, so I think I'm going to call that x. So that's going to help me, because given that the question is talking about the area, what's an area for one of the squares? X squared. So what's the total area? Well, I got 6 of them, so it's going to be 6x squared. So what equation can I set up? I've got 6x squared equals to, now, I need to round this number here. I need to round that. What would be sensible to round it to? Well, let's try rounding it to 5,400. This was my first try. 2 significant figures usually a good idea, sometimes 1, but here 2. And let's see if we get a sensible answer for x. So solve this equation, divide by 6. So you get x squared equals 900. And what happens when I square root it? Well, I get a nice round answer of 30, because 30 times by 30 does give me 900. So that is my answer for x. Now, part B. Is my answer an underestimate or an overestimate? Well, what do you think this is going to be? I think that I have rounded my original area down, so my answer is going to be an underestimate. Say underestimate. I rounded 5406 down. And that's all I need to say. Okay, let's keep going. Next question. Question 11. Diagram shows 2 rectangles A and B. All measurements are in centimeters. Then it says the area of rectangle A is equal to the area of rectangle B. Find an expression for y in terms of w. Okay, so first of all, let's think about what my answer needs to look like. My answer needs to be y equals something w. So that is what I'm aiming for. So it tells me that the area of these are the same. So I think it makes sense to start off with the area of A, which is just base times height, and make that equal to the area of B. That seems like a sensible place to start. Now, what do I do next? Well, I've got some brackets, so let's expand these brackets here. Okay, let's have a look at what I've got here. Remember that I want to make y the subject. So the first thing that I see is I've got 12w here and 42w here. So what I'm going to want to do is remove one of those. So let's minus 12w from both sides. I'm going to continue my working up here. So I'm going to have 6y equals 21wy plus 30w. Now, let's have a look at this here. I know that I need to make y equal to something w. Where are the terms of the y in it? Well, I got a 6y here and a 21wy here. So what I need to do here, remember, is I need to put all the terms with a y onto one side and then factorize. So what this question is actually all about is rearranging equations. That is where most of the marks are here. Okay, now all the terms with a y are on one side. I'm going to factorize out the y. And then my final step is to divide by what is inside the brackets. So I have y equals to 30w over 6 minus 21w. And that is my final answer. So I put this Corbett reference here because this is, although it doesn't look like at first like a rearranging equation question, once you make the areas equal to each other, it turns out that this is the skill that they are testing. So it's definitely worth you practicing this because it's always going to come up on one of the 3 papers. Let's keep going. Okay, question 12. Cumulative frequency question. So the cumulative frequency table gives information about the heights of 40 plants. And it's actually given me, most of the time with these questions, I have to work out the cumulative frequency, but it's given me the cumulative frequency straight away. So I can go ahead straight away and plot these points and these points. So my first one is 5 and 4. Should be nice and straightforward to plot these 10 and 11, 15 and 24, 20 and 34, 25 and 38, and 30 and 40. And a nice smooth curve between all of the points. There we go. Part B, use the graph to find an estimate for the median height. Okay, which value am I looking at? I am looking at, well, I got 40 pieces of data. So a half of 40, I'm looking for my 20th piece of data. But I definitely need to remember that I'm reading that off from the cumulative frequency. So my median is going to come from here. With your ruler, draw a line across and down. Now I need to be careful about interpreting this. So let's think about it. The gap between 10 and 15 is 5, and there's 10 little squares. So I think each little square is going to be a half. So if I take off a half, and a half from here, that's 1.5. So I think this value here, 13.5 centimeters. And that is my median. Let's keep going. Ted is trying to change 0.43 recurring to a fraction. Here's the start of this method. Okay, 1 mark question here. It says, evaluate Ted's method so far. So usually when it says this, there's something wrong with the method, and we need to say what's gone wrong, and what we would do to fix it. So we can see here that it should be quite easy to see that I might just well write it out. What he's done is he's put 10x and 1x, and we can see here that these decimal points don't align. The 3 and the 4 needs to be the same, but they're not. So let's say what he's done wrong. So we can say the decimal places. No, let's not say that. Let's say the decimal places do not align. What should he do? Well, I think that he should do 100x minus x. And why is that? Because 100x would be 53.4343 versus x is 0.4343. And here we can now see the decimal points will align, and I could work it out. So that is what I need to do to get that 1 mark there. Here's a shape with all its measurements in centimeters. Okay, got a compound shape here, so I know that I'm going to probably have to split it up. It says the area of the shape is A. Okay, it's a show that question, so this is what my answer needs to look like. Now I've got a compound shape, so I need to split it up. I can split it up a couple different ways. I think it's probably going to be easier if I split it up like this, but you could have split it up the other way as well. So I've got 2 shapes here. I've got shape A and I've got shape B. Let's find the area of both of those. So shape A. Well, I've got the base and the height already. So 4 times by x plus 1, which is 4x plus 4. What about shape B? Well, I need to be careful here because I've got the length, but I don't have the height. Because if I just use my highlighter here, this is the height that I want, but I've got the big height, the height of the whole shape, x plus 11, and the smaller height here of 4. So how do I work out the height that I want? I think I need to do x plus 11 minus 4. What is that equal to? X plus 7. So to find out the area of shape B, I need to do 2x plus 6 times by x plus 7. Let's do a box for this. And I get 2x squared plus 20x plus 42. So, final step, total area. I just need to add the area of A and the area of B. So 4x plus 4 plus 2x squared plus 20x plus 42. And I'm aiming to get the answer it tells me in the question. So we've got 2x squared, 4x plus 20x is 24x, and 4 plus 42 is 46. So that is what I wanted to show. So I know I got those 3 marks in the bag. Question 15, fairly straightforward adding algebraic fractions. I put the Corbett reference here for you to practice, but we've done this quite a bit in class. So what do I need to do here? Well, what is my common denominator going to be? Well, usually with these types of questions, I'm going to multiply the 2x and the 5. 2x times 5 is 10x, so that is going to be my denominator. Now, for the first fraction, how do I get from 2x to 10x? Well, I'm going to multiply by 5. So 5 times by 4x plus 3, that's my first numerator. And then how do I get from 5 to 10x? Well, I think I'm going to multiply by 2x. So 3 times by 2x is just 6x. And now I just need to do some algebra and simplify the numerator. So the first one, I've got 20x plus 15 plus 6x all over 10x. And then collect like terms, 26x plus 15 over 10x. Let's just check, does this look like my answer? Ax plus b over cx. Yeah, it does, so I'm fairly happy with that. So nice easy 3 marks later on in the paper. Hopefully you all got that. Okay, next question, question 16. There are only 3 red counters and 5 yellow counters in a bag. Jude takes at random 3 counters from the bag. Work out the probability that he takes exactly 1 red counter. And I want my answer to be a probability. Now, what kind of question is this? Well, it's talking about probability. It's talking about taking some counters. So I think this is a probability tree type of question. So let's set up the probability tree. On the first pick, I've got red or yellow. And what's the probability of taking a red? It is 3 out of how many in total? 8 in total. And yellow, it's 5 out of 8. Now, I can keep on going and doing this, but actually what I'm going to find is that my probability tree gets really, really messy. So I think there's actually a better way to do this. So I'm going to cross this off. I could do it this way, but it's going to take a really long time. It's going to be quite difficult. I think I'm going to think about instead what outcomes give me exactly 1 red counter. So what I mean by that is if I pick the 3 counters, how could I get exactly 1 red counter? Well, the first way is to pick a red first and then 2 yellows. How else could I get 1 red counter? Well, I could pick a yellow first and then a red. Or I could pick a red at the end. So if I find out what each of these three probabilities are, I think it's going to be an easier way to do the question. So let's think about it. For the first one, what's the probability I take a red counter first? 3 out of 8. What's the probability I then take a yellow? Well, there's still 5 yellow left, but this time there's only 7 counters in the back because I've already taken one. And then what's the probability I then get another yellow? Well, there were 5 yellows. I've picked 1 yellow already, so there's 4 yellows left and 1 fewer counters in the bag. So multiply all of these together. 3 times 5 times 4, that gives me 60. And then 8 times 7 times 6. Well, let's do some calculations down there. So 8 times 7 is 56. 336 is my denominator. Now, let's do the same for the other two. So yellow first, 5 out of 8. Then red, well, there's still 3 red left. And then yellow last, well, I've taken 1 yellow already, so there's 4 left, and then 6 in the bag. And that's going to give me the same probability. Now, how these things work is that I'm always going to get the same probability each time, but let's just check that out. So finally, 5 out of 8, 4 out of 7, 3 out of 6, yeah, it gives me the same probability. So what do I do to finish off? Well, I know that I need to take the sum of all 3 of these probabilities, and that gets me my answer of 180 out of 336. I don't need to worry about simplifying this because it doesn't ask me to give my answer in its simplest form. So my advice is, with these probability tree types of questions, if there's just 2 branches of the tree, then it's probably just easier to draw the tree. But if it's going to be 3 branches or more, then it's easier to think about the different outcomes. It just makes your working a lot easier to do. Okay, question 17. On the grid, show by shading the region that satisfies all of these inequalities. Okay, so done this in class recently, so hopefully you found this question approachable. My first step, of course, is to draw all 3 of these graphs. So for the first one, let's just write out the equation again. Let's think about my table of values. So what values of x can I choose? Well, what happens if x is 0? It's a little bit tricky, this one, because what I've got is I've got 2y plus 4 equals 0. And I now need to find my value of y. So I can minus 4 from both sides, and I get 2y equals minus 4, y equals minus 2. So my first y value is minus 2. What about when x is 1? Well, actually, I think that's going to give me a decimal answer. So let's try x is equal to 2. I'll do the same thing, and I get y is equal to minus 1. So that's enough. Those 2 values are enough. I don't need to do any more. I could if I wanted to, but let's plot those points. So 0 minus 2 is there, and 2 minus 1 is there. And because it's less than, it's just going to be a dotted line. So my first one looks like that. Okay, second one, x is equal to 3. Again, remember to draw these ones. I just need to find a couple coordinates where my x coordinate is 3. So I could have 3, 0. I could have 3, 1. I could have 3, 2. So let's plot those on, draw the dotted line, and I get that. My final one, y is equal to 6 minus 3x. Well, again, I can do my table here. This time, let's pick 0, 1, and 2. I think this is going to be easy. So when x is 0, y is equal to 6 minus 3 times by 0, which is 0, so 6. When x is equal to 1, I got 6 minus 3 times 1, which is just 3. And then that's my final one. So I plot all of my points, and I get a dotted line which looks like that. So I've got 3 marks already. How do I get my final mark? Well, I need to decide on my region. So it's a 3-mark question. So I've got 2 marks already. Final mark, decide on my region. So the first one, this is my line 2y plus 4 is equal to x. It's the less than sign, so I want everything that is below the line. I want everything that is below the line, so let's cross off everything above the line. Okay, next I got x is less than 3, so I want everything that is less than 3, so to the left of this line. So let's cross everything off to the right of this line, like that. And then finally, this is my line y is equal to 6 minus 3x. Again, less than, I want everything less than, so I want everything below. So I'm going to cross off everything above this line, like that. So what have I got left? I've got this region under there, call that region R. So hopefully that question was a fairly good question. It was a little bit tricky to plot that first graph, but trying different values of x and y should have given you that line you could have plotted there. Let's keep going. Question 18. Here is trapezium ABCD. Okay. It tells me that my area of the trapezium is 66. It also tells me that the length of AB to the length of CD is 2 to 3, and I want to find the length of AB. Other things it's got in the question, I've got the length of BC, which is 6, and also this angle, 30 degrees. Okay, so I'm told that the area is 66, so the first thing I'm going to just write down is the area of my trapezium is A plus B divided by 2 times by the height. And I know that that is equal to 66. So what kind of things can I find here? Well, let's first of all draw on the height of this trapezium. And I think what I've done there is I've formed a right angle triangle, and I'm going to use my angle 30 degrees and my side 6 to find out that height. So step 1, let's draw out this triangle again. And I want to find out that height, so let's call that x. And I think I'm going to use SOHCAHTOA here now to find out that height. So this is my hypotenuse, the 6. This is my opposite. This is my adjacent. And I think I'm going to find out, I'm going to use SOH. So sine theta equals O over H. Sine 30 equals x over h. X over 6. And to find out x, I'm going to multiply it by 6. So x equals 6 sine 30. Now, this is a non-calculator paper, so this is when you need to remember your values, your exact values of sine, cos, and tan. Now, sine 30, you need to remember that is equal to a half. So my value of x is 6 times a half, which is equal to 3. So let's draw on that that height is equal to 3 centimeters. Okay, I've got the height. and I've used my, my length 6 and my angle 30. Now I think I need to look at this statement here. The length of AB to the length of CD is 2 to 3. Now, I'm definitely going to want to use those lengths because in my area, these are going to be my A and my B, my parallel sides. So if the length is 2 to 3, well, I don't know exactly what those lengths are. So I think that what I can do, I can call this 2x and 3x. And I think I can set up an equation so that I can find the value of x. So let's now go ahead and plug that into my formula for area of the trapezium. So I've got a plus b, 2x plus 3x, divided by 2, times by the height, which I now know is 3, and that is equal to 66. So now I've got an equation with x's in that I can solve. 2x plus 3x is 5x. And let's times by 2. Let's divide by 3. And then divide by 5. And I've got a couple bus stops that I need to use here. So I found my value of x, which is 8.8. Now, what does it ask me in the question? It tells me the question to find the length of AB. So to find AB, I need to find what 2x is. So I'm going to do 8.8 times by 2, which is, if you just double that, I get 17.6 centimeters. So a very tricky question there. The first part that was tricky was finding the height using SOHCAHTOA, and then knowing that I needed to use that ratio 2 to 3 to help me find the length of those two sides. Okay, next question. Okay, this looks like a third question. So hopefully we've done this a lot in class recently to practice. So hopefully you've picked up a lot of the marks there. So let's write out my third. And my first step that you have to remember is that I'm going to multiply by not 5 plus root 3, but I'm going to change the sign 5 minus root 3. And now I'm going to set up two boxes for the numerator and the denominator, because both of these have two terms that I'm multiplying together. So let's go ahead and do this. So the numerator, 8 root 12, 5 minus root 3, and the denominator, 5 root 3, 5 minus root 3. Let's do the numerator first. So 8 times 5, 40. 5 times root 12, which is 5 root 12. 8 times by minus root 3, minus 8 root 3. Now, root 12 times by minus root 3, well, 12 times by 3 is 36. So this is minus root 36. But hopefully you realize that the square root of 36 is just 6. So this simplifies to make minus 6. So what have I got here? I've got 40 plus 5 root 12 minus 8 root 3 minus 6. Now let's go back to have a look at the question, because it wants it in the form a plus root 3 over b. Now there's a problem here, and that problem is that I've got this 5 root 12. So I think I need to try to change that root 12 to something root 3. So let's do that over here. What is 5 root 12? Well, I can split my root 12 into something root 3, root 4 root 3. And the square root of 4 is 2, and 5 times 2 is 10. So now that I've done that, I can rewrite this where all of my roots are root 3, and I can now simplify. So 40 minus 6 is 34. 10 root 3 minus 8 root 3 is 2 root 3. Okay, that was the hardest part of the question. Now the denominator. And we know that these two terms will cancel out. 25 minus 3 is 22. So what's my answer? My answer is going to be 34 plus 2 root 3. That's the numerator over my denominator, which is 22. And that is almost in the form that my answer is in, because actually what I want to do, there's nothing in front of that root 3, so I need to divide all of the terms by 2. And now it is something 17 plus only root 3 divided by 11. So I just need to be a little bit careful there for my final step, because it says in my in the question a plus root 3, not a plus 2 root 3. So let's keep on going. Okay, the diagram shows a graph of x squared plus y squared equals 30.25, so that is a circle. It says use the graph to find estimates for the solutions of these simultaneous equations. So the first one, x squared plus y squared equals 30.25, is already on the graph, but the second one is not on the graph. So I need to plot this on the graph. So first thing I'm going to do, I think it's going to be easier if I just added 2x to both sides. It's going to be easier to make my table of values. And once I've done that, easy to make my table of values. So when x is 0, 2 times 0 is 0, plus 1 is just 1. 2 times 1 is 2, plus 1 is 3. 2 times 2 is 4, plus 1 is 5. So let's plot those points on the graph. And then I'm going to draw a straight line like that to link up the points. Now, what do I do next? Well, remember, where the two lines meet, intersect, I've got my solution. So I'm going to circle here and here. So I just need to read off the graph for my x values and my y values to get the marks. So let's do the top one here. My value of x, and yours might be slightly different, is I think roughly 2.2. And my y value looks like it's about 5.1. And what about this one down here? Again, just looking really carefully at the graph, I think it's just before the 3, so minus 2.8 and minus 4.7. That's what I got when I did it on my piece of paper. So on my answer line, I'm going to write x equals 2.2, y equals 5.1, or x equals minus 2.8, y equals minus 4.7. And that is how I'm going to write my answer. Couple more questions to go. Okay, the functions f and g are such that f of x equals 3x squared plus 1 and g of x equals 4 over x squared. So part A, 2 marks, nice and straightforward, work out g f of 1. So this is a composite function where my first step, I'm going to find out what f of 1 is because f is closest to the number. So substitute, instead of x, 1. So this is 3 times by 1, which is 3, plus 1, which is 4. And then my second step, I'm now going to do g of 4. And I get my answer 4 over 16, which is a quarter. So hopefully got those 2 marks there. If not, practice those core bit. I think 370 is composite functions, 369 is inverse functions. Part B, there's a really tricky one here. The function h is such that h is fg inverse. find h of x. Okay, so what does this thing here mean? Well, the first thing that I need to do, my first step, is before I find the inverse function, I need to find what the function f(g) of x actually is. Once I've done that, then I'm going to find the inverse of this function here. So, first step, f(g) of x. Let's start off with g of x, which is 4 over x squared. Now I'm going to do f of 4 over x squared. Okay, so remember, to do this, what I like to do when I'm showing this is write out f of x again, and I'm going to replace all of my x's with 4 over x squared. So let's do this. F of 4 over x squared. So it's going to be 3 times by not x squared, but 4 over x squared squared. So let me just highlight what I've done there. I've replaced my x with 4 over x squared. I've still got this plus 1 I don't want to forget about. Okay, let's simplify this. So let's square that thing in the brackets. 16 over x to the 4. Because I squared the 4 and I squared the x squared. Simplify this even further. Well, 3 times by 16 is 48. And I don't multiply the x squared, the x power of 4 by 3, because remember, this is 3 over 1. Okay, so what have I got so far? What I have done is I have found f(g) of x, which is this thing here. I now need to find the inverse function of that. So to do that, I start off by saying y is equal to this thing here. I now need to rearrange to make x the subject. How do I do that? Well, I think a sensible first step would be to get rid of this plus 1. Now, I want to make x the subject, so I need to multiply by that denominator first of all. So what have I got here? I got x to the power of 4 brackets y minus 1 equals 48. Now, to make x the subject, let's get rid of, I think, this y minus 1. So I'm going to divide both sides by y minus 1. And so what have I got here? I've got x to the power of 4 equals 48 over y minus 1. And final step, I'm going to take the 4th root of that. So the 4th root of 48 over y minus 1. Okay, so I'm almost there. I'm just going to put on my answer line that h of x, it's that same function there, but I just need to remember at the end to replace my y with x. And that is my answer. So really, really tricky question there. It's definitely worth you keeping this question and then trying it again in a week's time or 2 weeks' time and see if you can get the same answer as I did. But nice and tricky question there. Final question, question 22, also a tricky question. We haven't done this a lot in class, but let me go ahead and show you how to do it. So, find the coordinates of the turning point on the curve with this equation. Now, I know that when I find the turning point, to do this, I need to complete the square. That's how I find the turning point of a graph. So I'm going to write out my equation again, but this time I'm going to put my x squared term first. Now, how do I do this? Well, my first step, I'm going to take out a minus 3 outside the brackets. So minus 3 times by x squared. Now, how do I get plus 18x? Well, I think I need to have minus 6x, because minus 3 times by minus 6 gives me positive 18. Now I'm going to close the brackets and add 9. Once I've done that, I can now complete the square with this thing in the middle. Now, instead of minus 6, I'm going to halve that. And have something like that. So all I've done in that step is I have completed the square of that x squared minus 6x. Now, I'm almost there. I now need to expand this brackets. So the first thing I've got is this minus 3 times by x minus 3 all squared. But then I've got minus 3 times by minus 9, which is plus 27. I've still got this plus 9. Finally, let's simplify this by adding the 27 and the 9. And now it's in the form where I can identify the turning point. So what value of x gives me that bracket equal to 0? Well, x is equal to 3. And so when that first whole thing is 0, my y is going to be just plus 36. And that is my answer. So really tricky question. Again, what I would say is go on Corbett. I think there are some similar questions to that. If not, come back to this question in a week's time. See if you can do this again. Okay, so hope that video was useful. Definitely some tricky questions at the end, but hopefully also lots of questions throughout the paper, not just in the beginning, but in the middle and the end, that you could have got lots of marks in. Okay, I'll put video 2 up on Saturday or Sunday. Best of luck with your revision.